So let's have a look at the topic for today: best and worst remote work moments of 2023 and what company leaders can learn. So we're privileged and delighted to be joined by leaders from Athena, I hope I said that right, Hotjar and PandaDoc today from all around the world to share their learnings and their insights. And I was saying that this is the last webinar of 2023, but it's also webinar number 40. I've moderated about half of those along with the wonderful Lona Ali from SafetyWing. So 40 webinars in, so it's been wonderful to see the same people turning up, the audience participation, and to be part of this webinar series with SafetyWing, which always gets some fabulous feedback. I always get lots of messages on LinkedIn after the webinars and reach out. So I'm really happy to be part of this webinar series. So we'll get going now in 1 minute. So as I said, if you want to share where you're joining us, we've got, I think, nearly 90 people who've joined live. A lot of people join or join in later on and watch these webinars on playback, which is really handy too. So for those of you joining live, thank you for turning up on the day, and for anyone joining in on playback, welcome as well. And we'll get going. We're just going to move along now on the slides and see what's next. So if you don't know me, my name is Rowena Hennigan. I'm founder, a keynote speaker, advisor, executive board member. My solopreneur company is called Row Remote. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on there, say hi, reach out, or also you can subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter, which is quite popular on LinkedIn, called the Remote Work Digest. So fantastic to be today's moderator on behalf of SafetyWing. And moving along. Thank you so much. Thanks to Charles. He's able to read my mind in the back room there in Texas for SafetyWing. And our sponsor today is SafetyWing, who are delighted to be providing global benefits for the remote workforce, creating services and support for our boardless world. And you can see a wee bit about SafetyWing there. They're building a global social safety net. You've got the product roadmap there, so it's interesting to see that, and the building blocks there that are part of that, including Nomad Health, Nomad Insurance, and Remote Health for remote and boardless teams. So thank you to our sponsor today again. And our agenda. So we're going to have a little poll. We've been doing these polls since the start for the 40 webinars, and they're interesting to us at SafetyWing. They're a way of us tracking as well how the different profile of the audience has moved along over the 40 webinars. It's been really interesting. When we first started doing these webinars and asking people in the poll what their plans were to become boardless, were they planning to hire internationally, were they planning to expand, we didn't get such high numbers as you're going to see that we'll probably get today. It's really been on the increase. So it's a credit to the acceleration post-COVID of remote work across the world. So we'll have the poll first, then we'll go to the panel discussion. As I said, don't wait till the Q&A. If it makes sense to ask questions during the panel, pop them into the Q&A, and Charles will make sure we record them, but or into the Q&A panel, Charles will make sure that we recorded them, and then later we will also have the Q&A. We'll also have time for Q&A if need be. So we're almost at 100 people joining live, which is fantastic. And let's go on to the poll there, please, Charles, and let's see. So you should have the poll prompt popping up in front of you, and we're going to let that run for about just over 60 seconds. So you might hear me saying rhubarb, 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 just to make sure that you get a chance to answer that. So let's see how many people have answered, and we're collecting response. We've got about 40% there coming through. So what applies to you? How many countries are you operating in? Maybe you don't have plans. Maybe you're going to be locally remote. We've got big regions, Australia, India, geographic regions that locally remote can be quite extensive for them across states, including America, maybe across North America as well, Canada, etc. So maybe you're locally remote, or maybe you've got plans. So we've got about almost 60% of the audience that have voted. We'll let it run for another few seconds, Charles, and see maybe another 10 seconds and see if we hit that sort of 60-65%. So even voted, pop in your vote there so we can get a profile of the audience. Fantastic. And when you're ready, Charles, you can end that voting. Let's see. So we have, whoa, so as I didn't want to bias the results, but it's been the trend recently. As I said, we've got a lot of companies that join in now, a lot of individuals from companies who are already in 6 or more countries. So 52% of you today are already operating borderless companies across 6 or more countries. That's fascinating. And then we do have a spread in that middle bit, and we do have sort of almost 29% there that don't have plans or considering it for the future. So a really diverse mix of different profiles there. So thank you for joining today. It's great to have that. It's great to have that data point in terms of the profile of the audience today. So now it's my chance to ask and welcome all the wonderful panelists. We are totally global today. We've got Bill in Buenos Aires, VS in Melbourne, from Athena. I'm going to check I'm saying that right, Bill. I should have checked before. We've got Ken from Hotjar, and Ken is down in Lisbon, down south of where I am in Spain, but he is via Texas. We've got Robin from PandaDoc as well. So thank you so much, Robin. And Robin is currently in Florida, but she is via Chicago. So what a diverse geographic group of experts we've got with us today. Welcome, welcome. Lovely to see you all. So let's have a little global remote work wave for everyone to make sure that, yeah, there we go. And what I'm going to ask the panelists to do just now is I'll go around the virtual reel, start with Bill, go over to Robin, then to Ken. If you could take no more than 30 seconds to give a quick introduction and tell us why you're here today. Starting with you, Bill.
Yeah, g'day, bro. Hello to all the joiners, all the viewers out there. My name's Bill. People call me Doc. That's a long story. We won't go into that today. I'm founder and CEO at Athena. I think you got it right the first time, bro, and then you reverted to a different one the second time. So you got it right the first time. So founder and CEO at Athena. Athena is a global talent platform. We matchmake job seekers in Latin America predominantly, with opportunities in the United States. We work with talent all over the world and companies all over the world, but that's more or less what we do. So yeah, just excited to share some challenges, some wins, some losses, and everything remote work for 2023.
Fantastic, Bill. Athena, I've got it now. It's cemented in the brain. Over to you, Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Corrales. I'm the Chief People Officer at PandaDoc. We are an all-in-one agreements platform that enables our customers to create, design, and sign all of their documents to keep their businesses running smoothly. And I am excited to share some of our highs and lows in 2023. It's been a crazy year that we've been thrown into, and just when we thought that things couldn't get crazier from 2020 and 2021 and 2022, we faced some new challenges in 2023 that I think we can all learn from. So excited to share experiences.
Thanks, Robin, and that's the right attitude in it, isn't it? What hasn't really ruined us has made us stronger. So let's see what learnings we can take. Love that attitude, Robin. Over to you, Ken.
Thanks so much, Ro. Hey, everyone. My name is Ken Weary. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Hotjar. If you don't know Hotjar, we're a products insights tool that gives an understanding of user behavior on websites, on more than 1 million websites worldwide now. Most pertinent to this panel, Hotjar is a remote company. We were founded in 2014, so we've been doing remote exclusively for 9 years. When I joined the company, I was the 14th person. Today, we are over 400, spread across 48 countries, and have no offices. And throughout my 7.5 years at Hotjar, I've tended to make the most of the remote culture, living as a digital nomad while traveling with my family for the majority of my time. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to have you, Ken, one of the OGs. So Hotjar gets mentioned quite a bit in the list of those original fully remote companies. So we're really, really blessed to have Ken with us today, because I know he is a fountain of knowledge. But the whole panel, let's start with positive. So if you haven't got your feet on the ground, just check in with your feet. You're all sat there at desks, so hopefully you haven't got your feet up, but feet on the ground. And let's start off with the positive. A little deep breath there. Bear with me and indulge me. Think about the most inspiring moment for you in terms of a remote work story or lesson or example or inspiration in 2023. So I'm going to kick off with Robin, go to Ken, then go to Bill, and share what comes to mind to you if you think of an inspiring moment or story to do with remote work.
So, what a great question, right? It's been full of challenges, but I think that for me personally and for PandaDoc, we've really leveraged the remote work. We had this great opportunity to rebuild our executive team this year. And I say opportunity because that is certainly a huge challenge for a company to face. But as we face the next stage of our growth, we had made many changes in our executive leadership and our go-to-market function. And when I look back at how we were able to leverage a global talent workforce to help fill these critical roles as we enter the next stage of our business growth, it's truly inspiring. So it highlights the benefits of being remote. And so we've hired an executive team that is based all around the globe, that is working together, that enabled us to hire the best person in demand generation that we could possibly find to run our marketing efforts. We hired the best person that we could find to run our sales efforts. And we're seeing the success of being able to do that. And when I turn the clock back 4 years ago, when we were in offices and we were staffing our executive team for the first time, we were limited on the talent pool that we had available. So for me, this was one of those moments where it was like, yes, we are going to continue to harness the power of being remote and access to a global talent workforce.
Whoa, and that's such an important one. So let's unpick that for a minute before we move on to Bill and Ken. So for those of you making the arguments for remote work at a business case, at a strategic level, I'm just going to add a few more bits of terminology in there or some insights. So what Robin is saying is not only a global talent pool, executive global talent pool for a go-to-market strategy. So she's giving the evidence that after being in office, going remote, enabled them to leverage that diverse geographic talent resource. Right, and there's so much nuance in there, particularly if we put our DEI hats on, and so many benefits. So that compare and contrast to being office based and have to be fixed to an office where we've got a pool that's much more limited. And Bill, I think it's good that we're going on to you next because I know how this is going to go, maybe, right? Because Bill helps source different talent globally. But for Robin, there is the evidence of that compare and contrast from a physical office and perhaps a limitation that you didn't even realize, that now you're living the real benefits. I'm not saying it was easy. These things often aren't, Robin, right? But now in reflection, in hindsight, you have that much more globally diverse, geographically diverse pool of talent, and that's a wonderful example, particularly when we have that benefit of hindsight looking to before and after. So thank you, Robin. Bill, on to you, and then we'll go to Ken.
Yeah, I definitely firstly agree with Robin. I think one of our advantages at Athena is we have excellent talent and a very diverse set of talent from all over the world. So I definitely +1 Robin's initial comment. What I would like to add here is more on the personal side rather than the company side. So as I said, we have talent all over the world. We actually have an interesting digital nomad policy where you can take partial leave to travel and work from wherever you like. And one of the fun stories that we actually had at Athena is, so we had a small product team maybe 18 months ago, and one of our kind of lead PMs, he was and is a digital nomad. So he's traveled all over the world for the last 3 or 4 years. And he actually was developing product for us using our digital nomad policy while hiking the Annapurna circuit in Nepal, which is, you wouldn't assume it would be possible to be in the that high up in the mountains and actually have the ability to work, but he did, and it was really quite interesting. And I think remote work, more than anything else, allows people to live their best life, really, and that's an example of that. You know, we only get one life, and all the data kind of tells us that remote work affords people their best life, whether it's examples like Luciano with us hiking while he's working and doing all the fun digital nomad stuff. It also affords people, you know, the ability to be with loved ones more, you know, look after themselves, eat better, train more, exercise, all that good stuff. So, but my positive of 2023 was Lucho, our PM, hiking the Annapurna circuit while he was developing product for Athena.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I love it. And I bet what people don't understand if they haven't traveled in remote work, and all three of us, I think, maybe have, so hopefully you get this, is that if you're traveling often, it gives you the motivation. So Lucho's daily routine, or when he was working, Bill, I'm sure he was saying, oh, I've got that part of the hike to do, I'll get my work done. You know, it's not all a case of FOMO and thinking you're going to miss out. You're much more focused to get out and enjoy that travel and work. The digital nomad course that I have on LinkedIn Learning, I did not the recording, but I did the majority of the writing for the scripts when I was based in Croatia for 2 months. So I get it. You can do it. You have to be organized. You have to be planned in advance. But that's a beautiful example, because we hear a lot on social media about, I know there's a strap line going around, remote work is about the future of living. And Bill, you know, that kind of reflects that, because for that your team member, their loyalty to you is going to be so high, I reckon, because they've lived their best life while working for you. So I really love that example, and it's a really good one to take away for leaders joining in. So that's really inspiring, and flips over from Robin's completely. Ken, what would you say? What's the inspiring thought that you're having, or recollection?
So first off, I love that story, Bill. That sounds awesome. I guess when I think of like reflecting on the year of what's really inspired me, is actually a series of mistakes made by another prominent company, Amazon, as it relates to remote work. Now, if you followed them in the news, they made a series of steps to return to the office. And I think there's a ton to learn here. So like they started off first asking all their employees to saying it's time to disagree and commit. And Andy Jassy said it's probably not going to work out for you if you don't come back to the office. We need you back in the office. And first off, I think this is a great learning because it's a clear stance. And this is super important for any company, whether it's to go into the office or go remote. They made it very, very clear. That was step one, and that was great. They also provided an explanation, which is great. You don't just throw that mandate out. Unfortunately, though, that their explanation was terrible. Quote, I don't have data to back it up, but I know it's better. Like that's executive leadership in its poorest. But this is super important, because what happened is, because they provided a terrible excuse, they had a ginormous backlash, right? 30,000 employees signed petitions. They were threatening to quit. There were showdowns with bosses, tons of HR issues, negative press, and just think about the amount of productivity and potential revenue lost because of this. So while I don't agree with the aspect of return to office, I agree with the aspect of a business having a clear decision and decisive and clearly doing that, which is what they did. But what they told us is, they didn't clearly plan it. There's some engineers saying because of how they were hired in the pandemic, it's going to take up to 3 years to move them all around. Clearly, that's a mess. It's not backed by data, and it needs to be clearly communicated. So what this taught me is, from just general management aspects, whether it's remote, whether it's office or whatever, make sure you're planning clearly, you're backing it by data and communicating it across the board. And the good news is, people like us actually get the benefit, the downstream benefit of that, not because we get our products any quicker, probably slower when we order from Amazon, but we get great talent that's available because they want and thrive in that environment.
Ken, that's so true. And we also get a lesson, a little bit of a lesson. There's been lots of those lessons this year in how not to do some of the mandates and RTOs. What's been interesting for me is what's been, flipping around, and Robin hinted at it as well. If you'd asked me in 2022, would we have as many challenges to remote work in 2023, I might have answered you more naively, because I didn't think there would be so many ill thought out mandates and different things that were happening. But given the global economic environment, given people's recovery, because I think we need to use that word, we're still recovering from COVID. And if you think you aren't, you're maybe deluded, right? We're still recovering from COVID. There's still a lot of fallout from COVID. And I think that for me, what's been interesting is, as a remote work advocate and wearing my bias proudly, I've had to come up with so many even better arguments, so much better data. I've had to dig, I've had to ask way more in response to people pushing back. And that's one of the things when you see it, the inspiring that you can, the challenges, you can see that as inspiring as well. And what's been interesting with all of the pushbacks and the RTOs and the mandates is that we have seen a global surge of data. We've seen a global surge of recording. Even Robin, you're sharing a little bit there from Pantodoc's perspective. Amazon's sort of mess up is a case study nearly in its own right of how not to do things, no matter what type of organization. So we're learning the whole time. So I think that's really interesting. And I think only now, in hindsight, I can look a bit more positively at 2023, because at times I did think I was living in the twilight zone. I just went, what's going on here? Did we not live through a pandemic? Do we have to prove remote work again? So it's been interesting times. So thank you for sharing those. And I love the way that we had quite there was a personal one. There was, quite different takes on that. So think of the challenges then, and we've started to hint at them there, right? So think of one of the biggest challenges, and maybe it isn't just the RTO mandates, maybe it's things like the climate crisis and all the different wider socioeconomic benefits of remote work that have started to get more coverage. We've had 2 wars where people are remote working from crisis zones, etc., which doesn't get the coverage that it should in the mainstream media. So there's a few examples to tempt you, but what would be, from those challenges that come to mind, tell me some stories of your own learnings, and get personal if you want to again. So I'm going to go to Bill, then to Robin, then to Ken. So Bill, sort of personal learnings in terms of the challenges. So challenges maybe from what the Tina has been doing in Argentina, your own personal life. What have you learned? What have you learned in 2023?
2023 was a funny one for us. I think the biggest challenge that we had was challenges around compensation. So what I mean by that is 2020, 2021 and 2022 was a really strange time. Obviously, the venture market was as inflated as it's ever been before. And it also inflated salaries and expectations. So we had a period where this goes back to Ken's point, where I think the most important thing is to have a strong philosophy. So our philosophy has always been that we pay local rates, but incredible local rates, and we have equity from executive to intern. So that's kind of like our philosophy. It's always been the same since day one. But what happened in 2020, 2021, and 2022 was there was a lot more location agnostic salaries that were on offer. There was fluctuations in market in different variables and different hiring regions. So it became very difficult for us internally to juggle. So we had to get really good at communicating, okay, this is our strategy, this is why we have this strategy, this is how the strategy is playing out. And I think as much as internally it was difficult, it was also difficult on the external talent that we work with. So that's talent that we're placing into partner companies all around the world. So we had talent that had inflated their salary expectations by 300 or 400% to market realities because of the 1 to 3% of the market that paid location agnostic. So we had to become, on the external talent side, talent that we're placing with our partners, we had to become compensation coaches. Yes, we can endorse you, and we don't set the talent's rate. We let the talent set their rate as a marketplace. So we had to become, coaches on compensation and say, hey, look, we can endorse you at X salary, but you're going to have a much lower chance of winning the role. Or so without setting the rate for the talent, we had to really work alongside, and we had to try and get a feel for what is happening in the market. What are rates for local rates? What are international companies paying to hire global teams? It was very difficult and tough to find data that was trustworthy. So that was definitely our biggest challenge. I think we did a good job internally. I think things have come back to normal, but compensation is the most touchy subject inside of any organization, basically all the time. So that was for sure internally for me. I've always felt like we look after our team really well, but it was difficult emotionally for me, and it was difficult to navigate as an organization. So I'm interested to hear if others felt similar. I think maybe SafetyWing might have location agnostic, so it might not be as, but that was my and probably Athena's biggest challenge in the last 12 to 18 months.
Wow, some really honest and relevant sharing there, because compensation comes up a lot, Bill. And just a couple of observations on that. If you don't know about Jessica Swan from fullyremoteWhereby.com, the video conferencing, she's done a lot of publishing and has a book on public and open compensation, and I would really recommend it. I'll share it in the links, share her reference in the links in a minute, Charles, if people want to have a look at that. But she's who I've looked to a lot when compensation has come up in my advisory positions. What I really liked you saying there that I want to highlight before we move on to Robin and Ken is the piece on coaching and mentoring and that role in terms of how you're developing the organization, because I think that's been a common theme that's been coming up as well, not just for you, in a lot of these different webinars from leaders who are building remote teams of whatever type of structure. That again, that vulnerability, that honesty, because sometimes compensation, as you said, can be an uncomfortable conversation, and we need to get comfortable often as leaders with the uncomfortable in these areas. So I think it's really good that you brought that up. But let's pass it on to Robin and Ken. And Robin, if you have anything to reflect back to Bill, I think that would be interesting, because that was a really honest share. Anything to add, Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. So Bill, I second the weirdness in compensation over the last 2 years. I accredit it to so many companies going global and removing borders. And because of that, like I've seen companies in San Francisco who are entering the global markets that I've been in for 10 plus years and starting to offer compensation packages that are more aligned with those that you might see somewhere in remote US, right? So maybe that because they're still saving money, but they're not offering San Francisco rates, but they're certainly not offering the rates that you would see in Poland or in Lisbon, right? And so I've seen the rates in Europe just inflate 2 to 3x what prior expectations were. So definitely feeling that. I don't know that it's leveled out just yet. When we're recruiting, we continue to see elevated expectations, but having more jobs on the market and not having as big of a crunch for some of our key positions has helped bring it down a little bit, but it's still there. And of course, it's one of those things that you have to wonder, will this continue, or will the trend level off as companies do start to go back into office, right? Like as these large employers start to have these return to work mandates. So I think jury's out on whether or not that's going to continue, but it's certainly a challenge that we've seen as an organization, and we've had to navigate ourselves as well, very delicately. I think another challenge for PandaDoc, like our biggest challenge in 2023 that many other companies faced as well, is as we were in the face of a potential economic recession, which we know still has not happened, but it's that potential looming recession that is out there, and the changes in the tech world as it relates to venture capital funding, right? So tech is definitely feeling the pressure of the economic environment, is that we had to elevate expectations of our team members, because when funding was high, we could demand less because we could add incremental talent to offset. And so as we had to level up performance of our organization and restructure the way that we did business, communication of those new expectations in a remote world proved extremely challenging. There is something to be said for having these internal communication, or having internal communications in person, where you can read a room, where you can respond effectively based on how individuals are responding. And having the absence of that when you're doing communication through Zoom or through Slack. And most people have their cameras off. And so you can't even see, like, the ability to read a room is gone when you're in remote work. But yet we made some of those mistakes that other companies make, which is we took our playbook of pre-remote work for how to do restructuring and how to communicate performance expectations, and we just applied that to the remote workplace, right? So we just took the same playbook. We're going to announce during all hands meetings, we're going to have written communications, and we're going to inform the organization what we're doing, and we're going to tell them why, and we're just going to apply it. That backfired, right? Like, that doesn't work. You cannot just take what you do remotely or what you do in person and apply it to your remote work setting. And I think this was one of the biggest lessons learned for us in 2023 as well. Luckily, we have listening tools for our organization, like pulse surveys that go out to the org every week to collect employee sentiment, that allowed us to course correct very quickly. So we heard that employee sentiment was falling dramatically, that people didn't understand what were the new performance expectations. Why were we changing the way that we did business and reorganizing functions and changing responsibilities? And then we were able to adopt for how do you communicate in a remote work environment. And so we shifted to more small group listening sessions where we took teams that were only like 10 people so that we could have a more intimate conversation, albeit remote. But I wasn't talking to this large group audience where I couldn't see anyone because half their cameras were off. And we were able to ask questions, and we utilized Slido in advance to collect thoughts anonymously, and help that drive our conversations for the team members, in order to answer questions and provide the whys behind it. And after doing those things, we saw a lift in employee sentiment, right? So we saw that it helped the organization better understand the challenges that we were facing. But it was a huge learning for us, not that you really cannot just apply your playbook that you had pre-remote and try to use that in a post-remote world. It just doesn't work.
And that there's gold in those last two sentences again, because in the remote work advisory world, we say about not copying and pasting traditional models into the remote world. So you've summed it up with that explanation, Robin. So thanks so much for that validation of that. Ken, over to you.
Yeah, two awesome points coming from both of you. Yeah, Bill, we saw a similar thing. We are our salaries are benchmarked to a single city, and we pay that worldwide across London. But we felt the same thing. And I do. It sounded like you've seen a lot less of that in 2023, and things have started to mellow out a bit, and we've definitely seen that as well. So to build on Robin's point, one of the ways we answered the questions from our team or criticisms from our team during that time that Bill surfaced was answered by Robin's aspect, which is in written form that team members could find it. So kind of our biggest learning was we've grown a lot in the past 24 months. And we've used Confluence as our knowledge base across the company for the past 5 years. As a result of that growth and that 5 years, Confluence kind of turned into a treasure hunt for important information. It had kind of gotten a bit disorganized, all right? Duplicate articles, conflicting articles written by different teams. Search was broken because there was so much stuff, and outdated stuff lingered all over the place. So in 2023, we decided we really have to get a handle on this because our team needs to be able to know what knowledge exists out there and be able to find it in an organized fashion. So we hired a knowledge manager and empowered her to clean this up. And not only is the information now clearer and easier to find, but it's accurate and it looks better. New visual effects across the entire knowledge base per team. With brand identity influenced and impacted throughout there. So here was kind of like my big learnings is number one, you have to write stuff down and you have to make sure that it's very simple and clear. If you're going to have a long process document, better put a TLDR at the very front to really make sure people know what it is, and so they don't get halfway through the article and say, dang it, this isn't what I'm looking for. And consider documenting what are those non-negotiables across your org and making sure it's clear, right? Do you have specific start times? Robin mentioned cameras. Well, our default is camera on, and we have that documented. That's, there's so much more, that at least it's better at reading the room when you can see somebody's face, even if there's 80 on the screen. But what are the cultural norms across the board? Headsets, core policies. What's the cadence of the company? Do you have weekly meetings or quarterly or the pulse surveys? Put that, document it, organize it, make it easy for people to find, see, and do. Once you've got it written down, you got to maintain it. Otherwise, it just turns into a dirty closet again. So that would be my tips and learnings.
Well, Ken, the thing is, thank you so much because you've actually, believe it or not, linked back to Bill's first point. So let me join it all together for you because I can see the links, okay? So Ken, documenting, having that Bible, having that single source of truth. To Bill's point on his philosophy of compensation, what their values were, you could have that documented. Obviously, it may change if you're using. You have to. And so the same thing back to Robin when she was saying we just learn from trying to copy and paste. Then if you're evolving and creating a new model for remote by design, that you're also documenting that as it builds. So in summary, because this, guys, that was beautiful. Seriously, I've done lots of these webinars and there are some golden nuggets in there. So we had Bill start off on that compensation, the vulnerable learning in terms of, that was something that he had to look at carefully because he felt it was a core value of Athena, and then looking at the coaching and how they meet that challenge head on and build off it. We had Robin reflecting that, but also talking about the importance of meetups. Now, I want to grab that one for a second because we will have a webinar in 2024 on retreats. Retreats are part of the glue or getting together for remote teams. And sometimes people join these webinars that don't realize that. They think we don't meet up. We do, right? We meet in person. We try and bring people together when we can. And I think that's really important, Robin, there. Also, your point on smaller groups rather than an all hands with hundreds of people on it and trying to mimic. So those smaller groups was a really good one as well. Remote by design rather than copy and paste the old traditional ways. And then perfect, Ken, to finish that off. You're tidying up Confluence, you're looking at your structure, your documentations, you brought someone on to be responsible for that. And for those tuning in who are kind of going, wow, that's such a big piece of work, don't overcomplicate it. Many times reach out to me on LinkedIn. Team charters are a simple start point. They can be 3 or 4 pages long. They can be a team agreement to team charter. And there's something that even smaller remote teams really can thrive with after starting to build that out. So thank you so much. I think I've hopefully done an okay summary there of what we covered. But what I want to go over to now, and we've got a little bit of time, is just to take a natural break here. Charles, I've shared a couple of links there, particularly on Jessica Swan from whereby.com. They're a fully remote video conferencing tool as well, and they've got some great information. Or Jessica she's written a book on it, on global compensation strategies and globalizing people ops and compensation. So I'm a big fan of her, so I've shared the links there. But I've seen a few questions come in, panelists. So I think we'll go on to this one, because I really want to pick out something that it's come up, actually, it's been interweaved amongst our discussions. There's a question here about how to maintain a culture and a great sense of belonging, right, whilst working remotely. And I think we're going to start with you, Ken, on this, because I know you've got a lot to say on this. And I think it's something that if I had to reflect on 2023 and some of the more meaningful moments, they would be the positive moments. They would be when I connected really intentionally with my remote team, when I met with people in person, when I had those special connection moments. So Ken, with your experience in Hotjar, what would you say helps to foster a sense of belonging in Hotjar? What would you share on that? Then we'll go to Robin again, and then on to Bill.
I'd say deliberate, intentional actions, and you can define that however your company defines it, however your culture infuses that aspect. So this can be something that you spend money on and something that you spend time on. And so it can be, we've done a variety of different things. We're always experimenting with different things. So we used to, for a while, we ran this thing and we called it Chill Jar. Every Friday afternoon, we did an optional social activity. It could be games online. It can be, happy hour. It can be a guest speaker. It can be, different aspects. We have different teams right now that are weekly doing different sharings of different ways to use our product to educate all of the company around different use cases. And then we do a variety of different things. This Thursday, we're doing what we call a Give Back-a-thon, and it's a series of contests that people can participate in. And if you win the contest, Hotjar will make donations to the charity of your choice, and then you share why that charity, and you build momentum around that, so you begin to bridge the gaps. We've done other things called Culture Jar, where when you have people from 40 plus countries, there's many different backgrounds to share, and the sharing of the types of food, the types of dance, the dress, the music, everything. It's fascinating. Holiday traditions, incredible. But probably the latest one I'm big on right now is we recently did this thing where we have a Hotjar cookbook. Different people, different backgrounds, have different foods. They mailed in different submissions. We have like an 84-page cookbook that's hardback, glossy cover. It's gorgeous, and it's super cool that our team shares, and it's really, again, how we can all contribute to different aspects. You just look for them. We have Strava Running Club. We have, you name it. There's different outlets where we look to bring people together that are both free, inventive, time sensitive, or just social.
And that is beautiful. There's so many examples there. And there was another question that came in while you were speaking, Ken, and you've answered it. It was about trying to foster those moments, connection moments, and interrelationships outside of just meetings in remote teams. But you've hinted at loads of them there. So I'm just going to ask you a question, though. Is there a person responsible for that in Hotjar specifically, in terms of employee engagement, or is the responsibility spread throughout the organization? I'm just curious.
It's distributed, but there's also ownership. So we have, for employee engagement, we do have a remote operations team who does sponsor and put on events. But at the same point in time, they empower the community to do that. So, like, for in June for Gay Pride Month, we have an incredible audience of people that put together incredible things that are not part of this audience. We just give the stage to our team, and they do fantastic things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we'll go on to you, Robin and Bill, but there's some brilliant examples for anyone tuning in who wants to foster belonging more in 2024. So please take notes and take them away. Robin.
And I think those were really great examples. We do some of the same team building events, whether it's a remote cooking class or it's encouraging our managers to host coffee chats with team members, either at the beginning of the week or the end of the week, where there's not an actual agenda that is related to work, but rather just an open space for the team to come together to talk about whatever's top of mind. And this was something that we implemented at the beginning of COVID, and we would spend our days talking about, like, what did you do over the weekend? Because no one was doing anything except for reading books, watching movies, or listening to music, right? And so we were sharing ideas, and then naturally some of the cultural diversity would come up because of how people were doing things differently, which how they were spending their weekends, which brought more cultural awareness to the rest of the team as well through doing these live coffee chats each week. And I found those a great way to inspire that sense of belonging. I think the other thing is their sense of belonging as it relates to connecting to the entire team, and then their sense of belonging and feeling as though you're connected to your leadership or to your managers. And those are two very different, they're very different. And I hear often, because there is this lack of in-person connectivity between a team and their leaders, that they feel as though whether there's a lack of empathy or understanding, they just don't feel that connection back. And the other thing that I do is I encourage our managers to have a conversation with people to remember, right, that when you're on back-to-back meetings the whole day, if that's the case, that you're still about to get on a call with somebody who has a life, who maybe if you were in an office, you would be at a water cooler and you'd ask them about their dog, their family, like what themselves as an individual. But when you're on back-to-back meetings and you're just trying to get business done, you fail to do that. And so having those conversations with one another, and whether it's a manager to employee relationship or it's peer to peer, because a lot of times peers also get on the phone and are just all business, right? Like, all right, I have to check these things off of my list today. So encouraging individuals to get to know each other as individuals in the absence of a water cooler that they can gather around and have those discussions is another way, I think, to inspire that sense of belonging back to the team.
Well, that's fantastic, Robin. Really, I mean, you're reflecting a lot of Ken's best practice examples there in terms, but you've hinted on something that I'm going to pull out in my leadership, with my leadership development hat on, is that leading in a remote first environment is different. Doing one-to-ones virtually and remote is a very different set of skills. Demonstrating listening, emotional intelligence can look very different from a one-to-one in a physical office. So if any of this is resonating with you, it is a case that some of your leaders maybe need some extra support or development in that. And Robin is very elegantly explaining that there in terms of how your scripts look for one-to-ones and that psychological safety that, if you're feeling a little bit nervous hearing this, not everyone is born with these skills. Sometimes they need to be fostered, they need to be supported. And also, even after 20 odd years doing this, I know when I occasionally have to do a one-to-one with someone new that I get challenged, because we're human beings, and not everyone we're going to have the same affinity with, or we're going to be thrown up with a sort of personality that we may find a little bit difficult, or a situation we find difficult. So I think it's really to add to that, Robin, I hear what you're saying there, and I think there's nuance in that in the remote first world that we need to call out, that there is skills involved in one-to-ones in the remote first world that are very specific and need to be fostered and supported. Bill, last but not least on this one, come on, tell me. What do you do to foster belonging in Athena? Just to remind you of the question there.
Yeah, we do a few things very similar to some of Robin's points there and Ken's also. What we like to do, I mean, we have a lot of virtual events and team building events internally. Because we are fully remote, we have hubs so people can get together, of course, but we are fully remote. We actually have a program that I really love, which is called the Agora Sessions. And what the Agora Sessions are, we take somebody once a month and they teach us about something that they know, something that they're passionate about. We've had cooking classes, we've had the link between skateboarding and rap music, we've had how to travel as a digital nomad. Anything that one of our team members is passionate about, they spend a month with our creative team and our marketing department, our HR team, and they put together an amazing presentation just to get to know the person a little bit more. And it's one of the most visited sessions that we have. Everybody joins and Q&A, lots of interaction, and it's just a great way to get to know everyone on a deeper level. So that's really fun. Things that we've done also that have been really successful in the past is trying to get that buy-in and that engagement. So we're about 4 years in at Athena. We set our values initially day one, but when you set your values day one, you don't really have a company, you don't have clients, you don't have employees, you're kind of guessing a little bit at that point. So what we did a few years in, maybe 3 years into Athena, was we had 38 members of the team at the time, and we had a value session. So we had a guest speaker come along who was VP of people at a successful company, startup in Australia. She came and spoke. We brought examples. We gave the team some homework. So they brought examples of brands that they align with the values of. So Patagonia is a very famous one, Allbirds, so on and so forth. And then we did a shared session. The session lasted 3 or 4 hours. We did a shared session in which we told each other what we think the values of Athena are. And then we voted, it went back to the leadership group, and the leadership group and myself kind of reshaped our values for the next stage of our journey. And we've done that with a number of different things. We've done that with impact, what impact we want to have in the organization, our brand. We have a few more sessions coming up, but it fosters engagement because our team feel like they're building this organization together. They've put their fingerprints on it, which is super interesting. And one final thing that we do that I really enjoy is, so we have a very detailed onboarding with new hires. So every month we run onboarding, and we have maybe 12 sessions, different departments, different breakout sessions. You get to meet a bunch of different people. The first meeting people have is with me. I welcome everybody for 20 minutes and I say hello. And then one of the first breakout sessions is the brand story session. So it's me for 60, I think I do it in 60 minutes now. It used to be 90 minutes, but we sit down and I go through what is Athena, how did we get here, and where are we heading? And it's like the backstory of Athena. And I thought that would be common practice. I've never worked in a startup or a corporate environment myself, so I just build things the way that I think they should be built. I don't really have too many examples to draw from. And I thought that would be kind of common, but it's very uncommon, I've found. But people really love that session because by the end of the session, I'm very passionate because I'm the founder, I'm the CEO, but by the end of the session, people are really bought in. They're like, oh my God, that's amazing that I now feel like I know how everything works, how everything got to where it is today. So yeah, there are a few things that have worked well for us. But yeah, super echo Ken and Robin's points. I think it's a tricky situation in the remote work, but if you can nail it, it's much more impactful for the team overall. So yeah, there are a few things that work for us.
So amazing, really fantastic, honest sharing there. And again, a real diverse set of answers. So we had Ken starting off with those fantastic examples of touch points for belonging, lots of practical examples. I mean, I can picture that Hotjar cookbook, Ken, and I just think like seeing it on the shelf, it's also bringing the remote into the real, isn't it? Having that tangible thing. So that's beautiful. And then on to Robin, echoing lots of good examples, but also touching on, reminding leaders that it isn't the old traditional model, that we need to be human no matter how many calls you have in a day, and we need to care about the person behind the screen, and building on that in terms of leadership development. And what you finished off with there, Bill, believe it or not, So putting on my strategy head and leadership analysis head for a second, or cap, you've visiting those values and co-creating them again recently with everyone at it, Tina, is actually part of building belonging. It's a practical exercise in building belonging because it's realigning your brand story. And even that bit where you do that brand story session, they identify with you, with your story as the founder, and they can buy into that. They feel they're part of it if they understand it. So I actually think you're right, because I don't know too many founders who go back and visit that. And I wonder also, when you visit it and you hear feedback from new joiners or people that have onboarded, which you learn as well, I'm sure. So some wonderful examples there, and some of them might sound obvious, but that's why we do these reflecting on 2023, because it's at that point, that stock take, that reflection that we learn. So we're coming up towards the end now. I don't see any other questions that have come in. I weaved the 2 or 3 that came in to the session, so I hope they got answered. I also answered and shared a couple of links in the chat. Nothing left to say, so that we finished on time, but to thank the panel really immensely for turning up. Thank you so much. I found that really good way of reflecting and taking stock on 2023, some fantastic insights, and it was like a little mini lesson in remote work best practice and leadership. So I really commend you all, Robin, Ken and Bill, for sharing and spending time with us today. And I hope you also gained some insights in this point of reflection. I've been Rowena Hennigan. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Looking forward to seeing you all on the next webinars in 2024 with SafetyWing. Meanwhile, have a peaceful holiday season. Take that rest. Your rest ethic is as important as your work ethic. And have a lovely evening, day, wherever you are in the world. Bill, Ken and Robin, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Thanks.